Friday vlog. Camera tweak. I realized that I kept shooting in AVCHD, which is the I'm choking on something. I kept shooting in AVCHD, which is the preferred format for my camera, because I have AVCHD and then I have MP4, and AVCHD just I heard sound packs better in AVCHD. Yeah, but some of the better options, like some of the better 4K options for this camera are in AVCHD. But the problem is most editors, editing programs don't, or hadn't usually, I don't know how to say this. Traditionally, editing programs can't natively read AVCHD because it's just a weird box to put stuff in. So you have to go around. But now most editors, editing programs, will natively read it, but it takes a little longer because it's an extra sort of function that it has to do. It's an extra line of code that has to run. So it takes a while to ingest. Basically, if I do a 20-minute video, which I'm pretty notorious for these days, to ingest that in anything takes a while. Even in iMovie, which is very low energy, it takes like 20 or 30 minutes, and depending on how I did it. If I did it in 60p, which I have been, I should check, by the way. Okay, cool. So this is in 60. Because I have been doing it in 60p, and that like doubles how long it takes to do it. So it just takes a while, and MP4 does not take. This will be the test, but I feel like usually a 20-minute video going through iMovie to ingest MP4 takes like 3 minutes. So I'm gonna try that. So yeah. In addition to that, I've been switching back and forth between natural and standard profile, just to see which one I like more. Because I am hopefully trying to get all the bugs out of operating this camera for when I shoot the documentary. I'm pretty sure I'm going to just use standard and just accept that if there's a light in the background, it's just going to be bright white and not have any detail, or if there's a black chair, it's just not going to be. I'm sort of like, I've realized it's not worth the trouble of doing like Cinelike D, or this camera doesn't even do log profiles, but a log profile that allows more dynamic range. It's not, there's really specific times where it's worth it to do that, and a no budget run and gun documentary is not necessarily one of those times. So there's an argument the other way, which is people shoot stuff on Reds because Red does RAW, and so if you shoot RAW, the chances of you screwing up exposure and everything are still there, but you can fix it kind of. So if I went out into the daytime and didn't get my settings correct, everything was super blown out and white and you just couldn't see any detail, that's what it's going to be. But if you have a Red camera that shoots RAW and you did it in RAW, you can bring that back to a certain extent. So yes, so there's two lines of thinking in shooting run and gun, which is just have everything, have all the settings baked in, and just go for it, and just pay attention to all the film school stuff, your exposure, your composition, all that kind of stuff. Or use a camera that shoots RAW like a Red camera, and know that you're going to have enormous amounts of data, but in theory you'll be able to pretty it up. So it's sort of just whether you want to go through the expense and trouble and time that shooting RAW affords you, and specifically shooting in Red in this case, which I feel like is an extra added list of, because like Reds get hot, and so their fan turn. I don't know. It's a whole thing. So yes. So my strategy for this low budget approach that I'm sort of trying to work out the kinks for is basically, instead of this being a cinema camera, which is how I've always sort of treated it, it's going to be a camcorder. And I'm okay with that. It's a camcorder with bad autofocus. That's basically what it is. I'm deciding that's okay. Yikes. 5 minutes. Did I write? Yeah, we've been breaking story in the room, and it's going lovely. We're gonna have to take a little hiatus in a week and a half or 2 weeks, and if we had the choice, we would not have taken the hiatus, because we're definitely slipping into the zone pretty good when we're working, and you don't want to mess with the magic, but unfortunately schedules are what they are. My fault this time. I also tried free writing the other day, because I feel like I've been free writing about once a week, and that's the minimum amount for me to not go insane. And I sat down the other day, and for whatever reason couldn't get anything out. So I think it's a result of sort of the emotional state I'm in, which happens. But yeah, I was very surprised, because it's been a very long time where I've not been able to just brain to fingertips just wander around. Yeah, it had been a while since that stopped working, and I wouldn't call it writer's block, because I was definitely still working on ideas, and I did fine in the room, but I was, for whatever reason, for that 2 hours that I sat at that Starbucks, it just wasn't going to happen. And I don't know. Do you be hard on yourself for not doing it? I feel like that's counterproductive. What I read, not a lot. I've been reading the trades again. The dude from Smokey and the Bandit died. Oh man, I forgot his name. Hold on. But yeah, Burt Reynolds died the other day, so R.I.P. for that. To me, he's the bandit because I'm a car guy. But I feel like everybody around me, he's the guy who has that naked spread that's in every hipster bar where he's laid out on the couch, I think. Yeah, so he died. I'm trying to think of anything else in the trades that was of consequence. People seem to be really liking Searching, which is that the film that completely takes place on a computer screen as that dad looks for his daughter. So that's interesting. I feel like that's really all that happened this week. What did I watch? Big Brother. And I don't know if this happened since I did my last vlog, but I think it did. The gay little person, he's not a dwarf. I need to be clarifying. The gay little person has had a few sort of slaps on the wrist. He had one like legit slap on the wrist by the producers for groping one of the guys, and he's handsy, but I'm not trying to say that as a way of endearing him to anybody. He's handsy, and that's problematic. But he climbed in a bed with one of the other guys the other night, and while the guy was asleep, he groped him, and that I don't know. Apparently they interviewed the people afterwards to see, and apparently the guy that got groped didn't feel threatened or assaulted by this guy who did it while he was asleep. But I mean, that how does that not violate show policy? I don't understand how that doesn't violate show policy. That's incredible. So he's still on the show, and he's like, according to the people on the cast on the show, he's a beloved person on the show. but everybody that's watching the show hates him, and have pretty much decided he's a sexual predator. It's weird. It's a very strange experience to watch a show that takes place 24 hours a day in the Me Too movement, because the paradigm of what is acceptable has shifted so much that this show feels like it should have been made 25 years ago in how they're dealing with inappropriate behavior. And I think specifically the idea of going to the contestants to see if they felt like something wrong happened is not good, because these contestants are trying to stay in the house. So they're going to say whatever it takes to keep them in the house because they're playing a game. So they're in a compromised environment too. I wouldn't be surprised on the other side, once the show ends, that somebody comes out and goes, yes, I actually did feel uncomfortable when this person groped me, but I didn't want to jeopardize my chance at winning X amount of money. So it's really, it's messy, real messy. But the show is also just, I think the show, for whatever reason, has become formulaic, just because the contestants on the show are just, I don't know, something's happened with the show where it was really exciting for the first half of it. Now that we're in the second half, it's very mundane, because nobody's doing anything and they're all just sort of trying to wait out everybody else, which is not how you win. I don't know, but the groping thing is real bad. So I also watched Black Klansman, the Spike Lee movie, and I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty strong until the end, when he shows footage from Charlottesville and Trump talking about how everybody was at fault and nobody was at fault. I thought that was a little much for me. It seemed a little antagonistic. It seemed a little Michael Moore-esque in what otherwise was a very tight narrative story. So, good movie though. Got no complaints, other than, the preachy documentary stuff at the end. I also watched Out of the Tour. Out of the Tour is on Netflix, and if you get a chance to see it, you should definitely see it. It's very understated and very sort of, it's a character story. It's David Foster Wallace, the really famous writer in the mid '90s, who's kind of a recluse and just antisocial, and I forget the other guy's name, David something, and he works for Rolling Stone magazine, and they do like a few days together, and it's a really interesting character story, but it's also very tragic, because you know immediately that David Foster Wallace is going to kill himself, but not now. But you definitely get that at all times David Foster Wallace is in the realm of suicide as an option. Like, there's never a doubt where you're like, oh man, how something catastrophic must have happened in order to get him all the way to suicide. It does kind of feel like he's going to make an attempt while you're watching. It's a really interesting story, but it's really well done. It's really sweet, and it's a really interesting take on friendship and the human psyche and all this kind of stuff. What it is to be famous, that kind of thing. Writing tip: zone out, daydream. Don't. If you can get in an environment where you're not trying to force ideas and you're just thinking about just wandering around in your mind, I find that's where my best ideas come from. And usually, if I'm working on an idea, the second I stop and just zone out, because the working on chemicals are already there, whatever I daydream about is going to be related to what I'm working on. So it all, but the daydream, the zone out stuff, I think is super, super useful, and it allows you to sort of play out the movie in a way your unconscious mind expects you to play it out, which is really revealing. Yeah, and then on the same token, meditate about stuff. Guided meditation, focused meditation. Meditate about something. And by meditate, I mean don't be like, I'm going to close my eyes and breathe and just think of this thought to try to crack it. It's I'm going to meditate, and this thought is going to be what I have, but I'm going to just meditate and not think about anything, but know that if I get this thought, I should hold on to this thought, that kind of thing. So, because the whole, at least for me, meditation is settling my mind down and acknowledging a thought, letting it go by. And so if it's and so I just have like a little bookmark where while I'm meditating, if I have a thought that I know relates to my whatever I'm working on, instead of just acknowledging it, letting it go by, I look at it, I explore it, I focus on it. In my experience, because I see it visually, when I'm meditating, I will look at it, and by looking at it, it becomes the whole thing. It's a whole, so meditate, daydream, zone out, shower thoughts, that kind of thing. Box office. I phoned it in last week. I didn't even look. I just said what it was, and I got the first three right. I got Crazy Rich Asians, Fallout, and The Meg. Nope, Crazy Rich Asians, The Meg, Fallout. I got that right. And then I said Christopher Robin and Operation Finale, and Operation Finale got number 4, so I got that wrong. And then searching, the guy looking for his daughter on the monitor got number 5, so that was a happy surprise. I gotta go see Searching. I think I've mentioned that I don't like, there was that horror movie that did this where everything was on a screen called Unfriended, and I couldn't follow it because it required too much reading and too much attention of moving around, and I couldn't organically move to the right spot in time to read the text message or see a video or something. I was too slow. So I'm hoping Searching does better, but apparently it's doing well. It had a limited release last week and a bigger release this week, and it's going to make top 5 again, apparently. So good for them. So this week it's going to be The Nun, which I heard was mediocre, but it's from the Conjuring universe, and the Conjuring movies were good. Some of the other ones were kind of okay, like Annabelle, the doll one. I was like, nah. So The Nun, Crazy Rich Asians, Peppermint, which I heard was meh. She's a spy, I believe, and then The Meg is still around, and then Searching. So, yeah. How is The Meg still doing good? That is the definition of fandom, when it's an objectively between mediocre and bad movie and it just won't go away. That's what fandom is. If Rick and Morty ever becomes terrible, the fandom will keep it on life support for an annoying amount of time for that same reason. Community, as an example, although Community I feel like was an excellent show, incredibly well written, but the same idea. It was dead on arrival at least by season 2, and it just kept going because of fandom. So, which is good. I thought Community was incredible and could have lasted a million seasons. But anyway, recommend. I tried to watch it yesterday and I couldn't find it because it just disappeared. But Babylon AD, sci-fi movie where Vin Diesel he dies. I think that's the whole. I don't think that's a spoiler. He dies, but because you live in this sci-fi dystopia future, he's gonna come back to life, and so the information about the girl that he's trying to protect while he dies is important for when he comes back to life to find her later. So it's like an escort mission for this girl who may or may not be a pregnant cyborg. And then the big thing about it is this idea of cheating death, and it's encapsulated by this where she gets kidnapped and he dies, and she grabs him by the face and says, "You need to remember this for when you come back to life." That was the whole thing. Yeah. It's an interesting story. It's so convoluted. I think the book Babylon Babies probably did better in explaining everything, because Babylon AD took a really ballsy move and didn't explain a damn thing. And I don't know. It's hard to say, because it's a really deep, vibrant, really well thought out world, but then nothing gets explained. And so it's really hard to sort of anchor yourself like logically, because you don't know what's possible. There's too much magic that you just don't know about. So yeah, but interesting idea, and one of those movies where I would love to break it down and try to figure out like what's not working and make the adjustments, because I do feel like it's one of those movies where in the final days of editing, somebody could have gone in and way dumbed it down, way simplified it, and it would have been a really satisfying story. But instead whoever was in control, whoever had final cut, was committed to this sort of really complex, vague, unexplaining tactic. And I don't know whether that made the movie a flop or whether the movie was just not marketed well, because it was a huge flop. But really incredible. Like I would put the world of Babylon AD up against something like The Fifth Element, maybe even Star Wars, where the world was just there's so much to experience, and you're almost dragged down by the actual story, which is what a movie is a story, but you're almost dragged down by the story because there's just so much going on in this world. So I talked for a bad amount of time. Again, as always, keep writing, and if you're watching this, thank you. I feel like I'm averaging 4 views, but I'm also watching it myself, so 3 views, possibly 2. Yeah, anyway, clearly these are for me. I sat back down. Apparently I'm going to go into a rant. Yeah, I originally thought this vlog would be sort of like a how-to series and would be a teaching tool, and now it's basically just a journal entry, and I like it that way. And the idea that I'm really not saying this to anybody, the idea that really this is just me recounting my week to me, I like that a lot. It's very self-satisfying. Definitely not a marketable, saleable idea, but yeah, it doesn't replace therapy, but it's definitely like a journaling outlet. I'd call it a journaling outlet. All right, bye.